Morning and welcome to Over the Target. I'm Lee Smith. Really vital, important show this morning. No doubt you've all been following developments coming from the office of Senator Charles Grassley, who has identified the center, what I believe is the core pillar of corruption in Washington, D.C. And I'm not talking about the White House, actually. Believe me, there are problems there. You know there are problems there. But the center of corruption is the Department of Justice. Charles Grassley has been going after them, identifying how the FBI and DOJ withheld evidence from the American people, from Congress, for 6 years regarding Biden family corruption. Grassley knows what he's doing. He's been in the Senate for decades. He knows what he's shooting at. He's on target. He's over the target. Where is the rest of Congress, House members and the Senate? We've got the guest, the ideal guest this morning to discuss it, the great Mike Howell, director of the Oversight Project at the Heritage Foundation. Mike, thanks for being with us this morning on Over the Target. And let's hit the ground running. What is going on? All praise to Charles Grassley. Where's everyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So backing up a little bit, about a month ago, Senator Grassley, and joined by Chairman Comer, who's on the House side, and the reason he's on there is because he's got subpoena authority because they're in the majority. They wrote a letter basically to the FBI and said, we're aware of the existence of a form that contains allegations regarding a bribery scheme involving Joe Biden himself. Now, what happened after that is the FBI, White House, DOJ, working through the liberal media, basically put out this narrative of, oh, what document? Prove it. Put up or shut up. It doesn't exist. Everyone was casting aspersions. Little time played out. Then it turns out, hey, the document's real. They got it. Grassley went on TV and said, I've seen it. It's out there. Give it to me. Turn it over to the Hill. And so what happened was this protracted negotiation. You had a subpoena that went out from the House Oversight Committee that says, give us the document. We'll only accept custody, physical custody of the entire document and nothing else. And this is obviously well within the bounds of Congress's authority. We're talking about one document, an unclassified document. That's very important. And there's a very good reason for Congress, who has legislative authority for oversight, to get this document. So then what happened was this protracted negotiation, and you had Comer and Grassley basically pushing for the document. And then at the 11th hour, when the House of Representatives was about to hold Christopher Wray in contempt of Congress for failure to produce the document, so there's going to be a contempt vote, first time in history against the FBI director, Speaker Kevin McCarthy came in and offered a compromise offer. He said, we don't need the whole document. We don't need to own it. You guys keep it. You can put it in a secure facility behind a closed door. You can slap as many redactions on it, and we'll limit the amount of people that can view it to not just the entirety of the country, but to members of only the committee. And so what happened then is members went in and they viewed this document behind this closed door, an unclassified document in a classified setting, which is absurd. And the document was heavily redacted. Then what happened next is Charles Grassley went to the Senate floor last week. I think it was Thursday. And he said, hold the phone, everybody. Like, you're looking at a redacted document behind closed doors. Here's what's underneath the redactions. What's underneath the redactions on this form is that there were 17 phone calls that the source had recorded involving Joe Biden or Hunter Biden talking about the bribery scheme. So the FBI redacted that information to the American people. The House basically accepted that offer. And our view is FBI director needs to be held in contempt. It is absolutely ridiculous. It's a slap in the face of the American people to redact that information for no reason. And people got to stop playing games. This is the FBI we're talking about. This is corruption of the president we're talking about. It's you get the documents, you get the witnesses, you get them under oath, you move forward. You don't play on their terms, you play on your terms.
Yep. Why did Speaker McCarthy back off on this? Why didn't he say, like, yeah, these guys have been messing with our voters. They've been messing with Republicans since before Donald Trump was elected. And now we're going to hold their feet to the fire. At the very least, we're going to hold their feet to the fire. Why balk? Why punt?
You're absolutely right. And there's so many obvious questions that stem from this. So the FBI had these allegations. They had them before the election. What did they do with the allegations? Obviously, it's well established that anything that even had the faintest sniff of Trump, whether it was any bit like spurious, specious, whatever have you, the FBI went full bore. They're still doing it today. I mean, for heaven's sake, the president was indicted after an FBI raid of his home. This is their game plan. The FBI, all resources targeted at the right, in particular, President Donald J. Trump. Now you have an example of credible allegations. And I use the word credible very intentionally because the source that is in this document is someone the FBI paid $250,000 for information. That's a reflection of how much the FBI trusted this source over time. It's a source they relied on. So the question is, what did the FBI do when they got that information? All indications point to they did absolutely nothing. Right now, the mainstream media is running with this narrative that it's debunked, that it was referred somewhere. And
have they actually even published anything on this? I mean, I've been looking in vain, and maybe I'm just missing it, but I've been looking for the New York Times and Washington Post and CNN and MSNBC coverage, and I haven't seen anything. I mean, of course, they're chock full of all sorts of Trump indictment news and speculation and garbage. But actually, have they done much on the Biden bribery allegations?
So it's been really interesting to watch, actually, because it moves as a coordinated beast. Okay, it's very important to understand that these aren't different entities on the left. There's a common thread running through them. They're all coordinated, whether it's the FBI, the White House, New York Times, Washington Post.
Totally agree.
So when one acts, they all say the same thing at the same time, and there's not much separation. So when the allegations came out initially about a month ago, the narrative was, oh, these are just, made up allegations. Republicans are crazy, ultra MAGA, whatever. Once the record started being established that this existed and these allegations were credible, the media then ran with this narrative that, oh, this was debunked. It's just, somehow associated with Rudy Giuliani. And that's a very spurious connection. They're basically saying since Giuliani looked at Ukrainian corruption at one point in time, therefore anything involving Ukrainian corruption is Rudy Giuliani connected. And they're also saying, well, it was referred somewhere in the FBI to a U.S. attorney's office, therefore it was investigated. And they're all saying these things with the same precision, the same nuance, and they're just more holes in Swiss cheese. But basically their narrative is debunked. It, of course, was not debunked. So that's the next step for the Hill. It's to get these guys under oath, using contempt if you have to, and say, what did you do to chase these leads? You've admitted the source was credible. You even paid him because he was so credible. Did you open an investigation? Did you try to get the recordings? Did you talk to President Joe Biden about it? Did you assign a team to it, open a legitimate inquiry? And all these steps, I think we're going to discover, is my personal guess, that the proper procedures were not followed. This was treated differently than if it had Donald Trump's name on it. And that is the weaponized FBI.
Right. Well, first of all, I just want to step back and say something about former New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, who has been a hero of mine, a hero of lots of people. And I think actually, especially people from the right, owe Mayor Giuliani an apology. Right. They've treated him like a nut for the last couple years now. And in fact, he was the one who was digging into this as an investigator, as a former federal prosecutor himself. He was bringing back lots of important news, lots of important information regarding the Biden's corruption in Ukraine. And now that we have more detail and more information on it, it's really important that we bring together all that information. And Mike, I want to ask your take on this, but you were suggesting, and I think you're right, that they didn't do anything. There was no investigation. They just let this. They buried it in. They buried it in a file. They buried it in a closet. But look, if the FBI has known, right? Because the first report from this confidential human source is from 2017. Am I correct on that?
I believe that's the public reporting. Yeah. Yes.
So what does that mean? That means that for 6 years, the FBI has had this information. Right? They've had leverage on Joe Biden, who since 2020 has been since January 2021 has been the president of the United States, meaning that a federal bureaucracy, meaning the Department of Justice and the FBI have leverage over Joe Biden because they're aware of his corruption. And that's why I am so happy to see Charles Grassley going after the DOJ, because, again, that appears to me to be the center of the corruption right now.
You're absolutely right. You're 100%. And real quick, to start off where you left off with Mayor Giuliani, let's remember that he was deeply involved in the laptop, Hunter Biden's laptop. And at the time, that was censored. They said, this is crazy. It's just Rudy Giuliani. And it turned out it's completely true. I mean, Hunter Biden is suing for his laptop back right now. An admission that it is true and what's in there is accurate. It's been verified in more ways than one. And so this going after Mayor Giuliani is just a narrative media talking point. They've sullied his reputation enough in the mainstream media that that's just their go-to. It's no different than saying Russia, Russia, Russia. That's their new claim. But yeah, on the source itself, this is someone the FBI has relied upon for years. They deemed him highly credible. they probably used him in other areas to pay someone that amount of money. So I think it's a fair question. Were there any other prosecutions where you relied upon this whistleblower, which would be a further admission of the degree of credibility that it bestowed on this whistleblower? But they did absolutely nothing. And keep in mind, we're talking about one narrow slice of the Biden family corruption. We're talking about the Burisma angle, probably something related to the firing of the prosecutor. Right. Meanwhile, you have money flowing in from the CCP-connected entities. You have LLCs popping up around the Biden family network, nonstop, and bank records that Chairman Comer has been able to get of money flowing in. So we are looking at just a small. $10 million is just this one case. The investigation is much broader. And so the question is, how does Chairman Comer and his team of staff, along with Chuck Grassley, know more than the FBI? In this short period of time, they're able to uncover all of this information, back it up with bank records, point to federal forms and whistleblowers. So you have this congressional entity that's able in this short period of time to out-investigate the FBI about it. And that's what Americans should be asking, is how is it that the FBI did nothing with any of this? Right. They followed up on nothing. And I think the answer is pretty obvious by this point. It's because it's a weaponized entity designed to protect those who protect them. It's a symbiotic relationship. Joe Biden is friendly with the deep state entities, including the FBI, whereas the conservative right and the populist, everyday Americans are opposite of it.
If the investigation that former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes led starting in 2017 is any indication, right, the reason that they got further than the FBI in their investigation is because they were investigating the FBI. The FBI is at the center of the scandal. I'm betting what we're seeing here. Actually, I'm betting. I don't have to bet. We're seeing it right here. The FBI is at the center of the scandal. The FBI and the DOJ have moved to cover up allegations of the Biden family's corruption. And the point that you make about, this is just the Burisma piece. Look at all the other stuff that's been going on with Chinese Communist Party. Look at what was it, $3.5 million that Hunter Biden took from the widow of the former mayor of Moscow. I mean, Grassley and Johnson released this report. What was it, August 2020, just before the election, and that was buried. And the FBI, I'm sure, they did help bury that, just like they're burying this news too. How far can Grassley and Comer get? Okay, two scenarios. How far can Grassley and Comer get with McCarthy and McConnell helping? How far can they get without the help of leadership?
So that's a great question. There are multiple battlefields on which they must fight. One is in order to get legal process on subpoenas, in order to take them to courts, to get, refer them for prosecution, you need basically the consent of leadership and a vote to hold someone in contempt to move forward. So that requires not only Speaker McCarthy ordaining the process, but a majority of the House of Representatives. So given what's going on in the Republican Party right now, it's pretty hard to get party line votes. A lot of people will not want to do this for political reasons one way or another. They think they don't like the direction of it, that it's beneficial to one person and not the other, or, they just aren't interested. So that's a tough road to hoe, especially without the firm support of leadership at the front end. You cannot have the speaker at odds with the chairman of a committee on Twitter. This played out on Twitter.
What happened? I didn't see this. What happened?
So you basically had on Twitter, Chairman Comer saying over and over again, through media interviews, tweets, what have you, letters, we will only accept custody of the document. Translation, FBI, give me the piece of paper. No redactions. Hand it over. And then you had, right before the contempt vote was to be scheduled, Speaker McCarthy offering an alternate deal, saying we will not hold you in contempt, Ray. You're off the hook if you just let us view this document with redactions behind a closed door. And on Twitter, Lee, they were posting these at odds messages. And not everyone's tuned into these details. That's why we started the Oversight Project of Heritage, because we need people with eyes on this stuff who are in the game, suing on our own records requests, investigating our own things, that can pay attention to these slight discrepancies. But I'll tell you who was paying attention for this, major gulf between them that is hard to detect unless you know the law and what's going on, was the FBI. The FBI saw, oh my gosh, this is our get out of jail free card. It would have been so embarrassing for them to have the FBI director held in contempt of Congress. And so they saw this, two options, and they took the Speaker McCarthy option, the lesser option, where they didn't have to turn over the document. And then they redacted the most explosive parts of the document. And so our view is the FBI, by redacting things that had no business being redacted, the 17 recordings that existed is what they redacted, he's got to be held in contempt. Join the American people. We already hold him in contempt. It's time Congress does too.
Good point. Underscore the contempt the American people hold the FBI in by you two, our representatives, our elected representatives, by holding them in contempt. By the way, I want to talk about those redactions when we come back. We're going to cut away for less than a minute. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, make the jump. We're going to Epoch TV exclusively. Return. When we return, we're going to pick it up. I told you that Mike Howell was great. I said he was the great Mike Howell. You've seen he's fantastic, picking up different details for us. Come back and watch the rest of our conversation. You should not miss a single second of it. Make the jump. See you in less than a minute. Russian agent Donald Trump is going to go to jail for 300 years.
This seems like a fairly damning allegation. But if we look at it in context, if we consider the Hillary Clinton email scandal,
Joe Biden had demanded $5 million from a Ukrainian energy company. The same company, Burisma, that employed his son Hunter.
if we consider even the Nixon Watergate scandal, what's happened here seems to kind of pale in comparison.
The FBI sent a confidential human source, a spy, against the Trump campaign to ask about Hillary Clinton's emails. There's something happening on the surface. There's something else going on underneath the surface.